but we are going on with the show, and we are excited to have you. Happy New Year to everyone. It is 2023, which sounds crazy to me, but we're going to talk about everything past, present, future, and how it all kind of comes full circle. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Jason Harris. How you doing, friend?
Hey, what's going on, guys? So glad to be here to see you guys. Happy New Year, by the way. Thank God 2022 is over, no?
We're so glad to have you.
I love 2022.
Yeah, 2022.
I do too. Everybody's like, what's your goal? I'm like, to stay as awesome as I am.
It was like raise the roof kind of year. What are you talking about?
Just do what you would do on a Tuesday with a year. Come on.
Right.
You know what? I do better in years that are more chaotic. I need more chaos, not this, not this easy money stuff. I know that's
because you're a diamond, Jason.
I need some disruption. I need.
He's a diamond. He does well under pressure.
Hey, Jack, how you doing, my friend? Oh, I got your right.
Remind me of the friend, like Lee said, he wasn't eating a sandwich. Terrific.
Showing off with his giant water bottle.
Like I said to Jason, I was very, very excited to be invited to the show when Jim said the first 7 people I wanted couldn't come on. Would you come on? And I was I'm telling everybody, and then I saw Jason Harris, and I was like, eh.
Oh, you gotta appreciate the honesty. And Bobbie, what is the title we're going with you now? What's the title? Duchess of all things awesome.
All things. Well, you know, my official work title. When I opened the company, I felt like it felt weird to like be the CEO or when it was just me to begin with. So I started out with President of World Domination, and I've kind of stuck with that since then.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to have both of you and Max here. Max, my brother, my friend, my person. Right. How you doing?
Listen, I'm doing great. It's another day in paradise. I'm in Spain. And
do you celebrate the New Year there?
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
You're always in Spain. Did you lose your citizenship and you just want to tell us?
No. I'm an American citizen, but I do have residence in Spain. But I do make all my money in the United States. But I spend it all here.
That's awesome.
Telling you.
Well, our topic for today is, 2023 and what we're going to do. What has been disruptors? What is failed? What is going to work? Jason, I want to start with you because interestingly enough, you had posted on LinkedIn yesterday or the day before, who knows, one of these last couple of days about Scion and the failure of Scion. And you pretty much talked around the marketing aspects of it. Can you expand a little bit on that? Because I think that is super relevant to what 2023 is going to yield.
Well, I think anybody can learn from the marketing blumber that was Scion. I mean, it's funny because, you look at 2023 and I think everything in 2023 is going to be so data driven. And then you looked at what Scion did and they just simply ignored it. They ignored every aspect of it. All right. They knew that they were losing sales. All right. From the Camry and from the Corolla. They knew that their audience was, over the age of 40, and they just ignored the living crap out of it. And they sponsored raves, marijuana conventions. And then of course my favorite campaign they ran ever was Dudes and Donuts, which literally was a series of videos of guys in muscle shirts.
Trying
to really missed that whole cop opportunity there.
Oh, yeah.
Basic
and so and I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons that we can go into 2023 is how data driven is your marketing efforts going to be, your operation efforts and your strategies are how data driven are you going to make them? Because I think that's going to be insanely key for this next year.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is when you posted that, I had a lot of traumatic memories because I worked for Scion for many years. And in fact, we were one of the top Scion dealers in the country. And when Scion came in and asked us what we were doing to be so successful, I said, we are doing absolutely everything against what you told us to do.
The opposite.
So, I'm going to give some examples because I do think this is super relevant to some of the blunders or the things that are going to fail because we made decisions based on a short period of time and trying to put all that stuff in. So Scion only wanted certain sales reps to be able to sell Scion. Okay. Problem number 1. If I spend an hour with you and the perfect vehicle for you is a Scion, but I've showed you a Camry am I going to turn you to another sales rep to sell a Scion, or am I going to let you leave in the hopes you come back and buy a Camry in a couple of days? Okay. So that's one issue. We let everybody sell them, even though Scion didn't want us to. Okay. The second big one, and this goes to my favorite topic of blunders of blunders, digital retailing. They tried to push the whole thing online.
That's right.
When it failed, which it did, because nobody wanted to do the credit app, they actually started spiffing salespeople to do the credit app online when they were at the store buying the car so that they could prove their narrative. And
Or someone had a pay plan internally. That was how many credit apps got done.
Right.
Right.
But it's the same. I mean, don't we all see that it's kind of the same garbage 10 years later,
100%.
exactly 10 years later, that we're doing now? We're trying to force narratives for the sake of, I had a great idea and I want to prove that it worked, rather than following the data like Jason just said and saying, hey, you know what? It didn't work. We tried, no biggie. Let's start over and try something different. So,
We're coming off the 3 of the best years our industry has ever had, right? And now they're going to come back into it. And the narrative that has been the last few years doesn't exist.
correct.
No way.
Throw it out, gone. It's a new year, it's a new time, and it's ready to start getting back to selling some cars, people.
Yeah, and wasn't their target audience at that time baby boomers? Am I wrong? I don't know for sure.
That's
but
what they
wasn't
were
that the
selling
target
cars
market?
to, but they were trying to market to generation Y and X.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
they
was
totally trust credit apps online 10 years ago.
100%. Now, some of the data, and I will tell you, Jason, one of the things you had commented about, the data showing that the people who were actually buying the vehicle had an average age of, I don't remember exactly what the stat
40
was.
years old.
Right. But a lot of that actually did have to do with, these children couldn't buy the cars, right? They could not buy the car. They were 19, 20, 18, right? Those kids couldn't buy those cars. So parents were buying the cars. And so those registration information doesn't always match who's actually driving those vehicles. So there is a little bit of wiggle in that sort of thing. But
At store level, it was a lot of grandma needed something easy to park.
You ain't
100%.
kidding. Not only easy to park, but when you talk about the need for big space to get into the car, they couldn't afford maybe a minivan. It had good hip, knee, ankle, drivability. And I sold a crap load of Scion XBs to people in business. I wish they didn't get rid of the vehicle, because honestly,
It was a great car.
crap load of those vehicles. And you still see them on the roads today. But they failed because they tried to force a square into a round hole. That's where they failed.
And then you have other examples, like there's some great examples out there, like the one Jeff just shared with us, which I think I'm going to force him to go take it off the wall again so he can share with everyone. Talk about connecting with your audience. I mean, Jeff, you got to tell us about the story, man.
Yes,
you're writing the right
I
narrative.
hung it back up.
I know you did.
Let's do good.
All right. Well, I wish I knew. I could have had one ready to share on the screen.
Would have had it autographed for you guys too.
So this is connecting with your audience.
So people that can't see what we're seeing a picture of a slightly younger Jeff dressed completely in leather with a whip in his hand and a Land Rover. Is that an LR2 in the background? Is that what I see?
No, man, that's a Discovery.
Discovery. Okay, so it's a Discovery.
This is,
Jeff, I
this
want
is-
that picture.
This
Oh,
is
yeah.
late 90s.
It looks like 1970s, but we'll go.
Bobbie, this could be one of your Facebook online relationships.
So-
Jeff, I'm trying to keep a low profile right now.
Put it in the bank.
It's hard to be sexy and successful at the same time with a whole bunch of confidence. It's rough,
Thank
I'll tell
you.
ya.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
But I mean, look
Eyes
at it.
are
That's
up
a perfect
here, honey.
example. That's a perfect example. I mean, look, it was a big, boxy, ugly-looking SUV. All right, they need to cut through the noise, and Jeff Stearns completely dressed up in leather with a whip.
All right, but I can't take credit. The ad agency, Sean Mara, who I still talk to, said, listen, this Cadillac dealership that you have selling Land Rovers in this southern mansion with white pillars and the marble floor and the brass chandelier, where people say to the kids, whisper like they're in a funeral home, like, shh, you're in the mansion, wasn't really conducive to the Land Rover crowd, which was, of course, younger or whatever. but also didn't always like girls if they were a guy.
No.
Let me put this more politically correct because this is live. They had clean trades and credit. All right. So
Jeez Louise. Do we
The things that you make me laugh at in life that I shouldn't have never ceased to amaze me.
so
Ridiculous.
anyway, this ad agent
But
said, why don't we come up
leather
with this
started
whole
with the motorcycle,
campaign?
So
I was only the surprise at the end. That ad ran with a beautiful blonde, and that was leather optional. Another one was a girl in a bride's gown tugging her new husband by the tie, and one said plenty of leg room. And one had a hot chick in a dance position with big hair, and it said plenty of headroom. And it was in the alternative newspaper. We did get a lot of people in. There's no doubt about it. And I was in a suit with glasses and whatever. And I think only like 3 people out of all of them said, were you that guy? Other than that, I
Because you were wearing regular
I could do
clothes.
the whatever. No one knew it was me. Not at
But
all.
look, the data was there. They listened to the data and they connected with the audience.
right.
And
mean,
I
that's
think
how
that's going to be the
marketing
challenge
works.
next year, right? And not just
The
in
right
marketing,
market,
but
the right
operations.
audience, the right message at the right time.
Yeah. Now translate that over to like operations, right? And like, look, the day of or the days of the sales process is dead. It's gone. It's dead. It's out of here, right? The consumer demands now a buying process, and not only just one. They want several different ways they can do it. You know, not necessarily mean they're even going to use the other 2 or 3 options. They just want to know that there is another buying option. Hey, Jim's with us.
You guys got us in trouble.
All right, well, I guess we can
Take it
stop
easy.
Got
being honest
ourselves
about it.
12 minutes, guys. 12
You
minutes.
did good, April. Take it, April. You got it.
We're gonna
It
find out.
wasn't even the regulars this time.
Dawg Pound.
You
Oh,
got
I
here
have
just in
I
time to
have
argue
to-
with Jason. So
I
perfect.
had some technical issues. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I think Bobbie knows, and maybe Max. I was hacked by hackers from another country,
Oh no.
from India, and some of the remnants of the fix didn't rehook up my camera.
I was worried it was Russia.
It was.
I sent them to you.
Matter of fact, the people that fixed my camera were from Russia.
Of course. Smartest IT in the world.
So
Start with
anyway,
leather, we go to
I'm back,
Russia. Pull it together, boys.
today we're talking about the disruptors. Well, we're supposed to be talking about the disruptors. The disruptions in the car business. First of all, the disruptors were the digital retailers. That was going to be the end all, do all. We were going to sell cars online with no need for dealerships, no need for employees. And the manufacturers took the bait and pulled the bobber under, and they ran with it. Zing! You know. So the manufacturers thought, well, we're going to get rid of the employees. Well, that didn't quite work out. And a certain number of customers did transact their cars online. They did buy their cars online, but most of them didn't. I mean, during the pandemic, they got some false readings. What do you think, Jason?
100%. Definitely a lot of false readings, right? And I think that's what we're seeing right now. I mean, you're seeing guys like Brian Kramer. You know, all the messaging around used car pricing right now changing 2, 3, 4% on a weekly basis right
I
now.
love Brian Kramer. I bet he became a communist. He went with cars.com.
He did cross over to the dark side, but I still love the guy.
For those of you who don't know, he's joking. This is an inside joke.
There's no dark side, I promise.
It's
Oh, I
so
just made it public.
Hey, it's the first show of the year. We get to have a little bit of fun. It's all good. It's all
Yeah,
good.
I run security
have
for
a
my
lot
bonus
of
dad,
fun.
so make sure we're tight.
Well, the truth of the matter is, the manufacturers ran with it. Then Carvana was the model. There were several things that made the manufacturers think they could get away with it. First of all, Tesla circumvented the franchise laws in virtually all but 18 states. All but 18 states gave up the franchise laws. They dropped trowel and let Tesla in. So Tesla got away with circumventing the franchise laws, and then all of a sudden Carvana starts selling a bunch of cars online during the pandemic. Once again, we got a false reading. Everybody wants to do that. Nope, not everybody wants to do it. Some people want to do it. And by the way, you need to have digital retailing in your dealership. You need to have Prodigy or Darwin or Roadster or AutoFi. You need to have one of those, but it's not going to work the way they told you it would work. And you can use it as a desking tool too. What's your thoughts, Bobbie?
You know, I think it's more that our industry is conformist than it is that Carvana is really a disruptor. I think they had an idea that was different, but I don't think they disrupted too much. At least it's not looking like it right now.
Oh, well, the manufacturers modeled themselves. The Ford program, no, I can't think of the name of it, but CarBravo was GM's version. Everybody was going to chase Carvana and CarBravo and whatever Ford's version was. And I'm sure Stellantis has a version. Everybody was chasing the Carvana model.
There's a couple things that happened, Jim. May I?
Go ahead.
So COVID hit, and that made a whole bunch of things more relevant, more used. That was an isolated moment in time that made a lot of things more interesting or more convenient or more whatever. I'm not going into a restaurant. I'm using DoorDash, whatever. As soon as that factor ended, that factor ended. Okay. So that's part of it. But also from a disruption standpoint, they also proved how inefficiently one could advertise. Because I'm not saying that there aren't some people that want to click buy now, but I've been talking about buy now on a website since the late 90s, early 2000s, and even back in when eBay was heavy. Very few bought now. Now, I agree that digital retailing components are very, very important, because where the guest stops in their process, in payment, in trade value, in whatever they're doing, that's where they turn into a lead. Okay, so it's relevant from that standpoint. But here's another thing. A lot of people say, and when they're trying to be accountable and look themselves in the mirror, did Carvana and Vroom introduce something that we need to pay attention to? Look, I've been in the car business 35 years.
Business.
It never, well, hang on. But was it people wanting to do it? Or is there so much saturation, advertising and marketing to the tune of like $1,100 per wholesale and retail unit that Carvana did in advertising and marketing, done that it just pushed a few across the finish line in the most inefficient way possible? I mean, what if April did a 27 million saturation mailer and that many showed up? Big deal. The percent is still nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They spent a fortune on advertising, way too much.
We spent a fortune.
The stock is down 99% since their high a year ago. I've seen figures on LinkedIn recently that if you invested $10,000 with Carvana a year ago, you would have $103 left of that $10,000.
Well, they're down half. They're down half from their open. Forget about their high.
But that's what happens when you market an experience that customers don't want. See, look, that's the kicker here. They ignored the data, right? They developed out an experience that customers don't actually necessarily want, or a small percentage do.
There is a percentage that'll do anything.
100%. And look, I actually probably fall into that category. I got to be honest with you. Me, just personally, I like the Carvana concept. I don't want to go to a dealership. I get too much things going on.
You're in the car business. You're one of us.
There's a percentage.
You're not our customers. You are not our average customer.
You can't
too much
feel or
time in
think
the ice
like a
cream
retail
shop. That's what it is.
Yeah, we know how I feel about this.
Bobbie,
So
share.
I think that we have to look to the next generation of people we're trying to sell a car to. And the reason that I believe that automotive is so conformist is because we're always trying to sell to the people that we know how to sell. Just like we're always trying to buy the car that we want instead of the car that we couldn't sell because we didn't have it. It's such a common occurrence. And we should be selling 100% online. We should also be selling 100% in person. We should also be selling out of a vending machine if we want to, so that every part of our market and every part of our targeted audience has the ability to buy a car from us the way that they want to buy one.
Dealer article. I just wrote exactly what you're saying. I hate to say I agree with Bob. I agree with Bob.
First, listen, it happens sometimes. Sometimes I got this. I'm wearing sequin pants today. I'm all kinds of sparkling. It's frustrating to me that the focus is always on like what's the dealership doing wrong and what's Carvana doing wrong. And at the end of the day, there's a place for all of these things.
People
I
say
want
we
to see somebody
learned
get out there and
something
do
from
all of
them.
them.
We didn't learn anything from them. We learned a Ponzi scheme that lost $1 billion this year. I mean, what did we learn from Carvana? We learned how to
Well,
spend
you
too
can't
much
deliver
money.
cars in every single
We
state.
learned how to pay too much for cars. We learned to stand at the auction, raise our hands. We had cramps. Come on, what did we learn from what did we learn from these people? Max, what did we learn from these people? How to sell F&I products? What did we learn?
So, Jim, before I answer that question, I'd like to connect this segment to the first segment while you were having technical difficulties.
Okay.
And the first segment was about Scion and how it failed. And Jason and April, they said that Scion completely ignored the data.
Well,
Right.
I commented heavily on Jason's column there because I was all over. Guess who ran Scion? Jim Farley.
Right.
The same
That's
guy
right.
that was doing this identical same
Right.
thing with Ford today. He didn't learn his lesson.
Exactly. So what I want to say is that maybe I'm not as sophisticated as Jason and April and Bobby and Jeff.
No, you're
And,
pretty rough.
Oh,
You're
here we
definitely
go.
sophisticated as me.
Here we
You
go.
opened the gates on that one.
Rough book, high miles.
Right. And I really don't care about the data, right? And I don't think that Scion ignored the data. I think Scion produced an ugly car that
Oh,
nobody
come on.
wanted,
That was an amazing looking
as
car.
opposed to Lexus, when Toyota really wanted to stand out and go after Mercedes and BMW and Audi, they were able to produce an amazing product. Here, they completely miscalculated because they were targeting younger people, and somebody in Japan, together with Jim Farley, decided that a square Xbox is something that young people want, which is ridiculous.
Well,
Now,
you got to
to-
understand, Max. It goes deeper than that. Scion came around in 2003. They defunct it in 2016. They hung on way too long. But anyway, they were chasing Saturn that had lost $1 billion a year for General Motors. They were chasing Saturn that also didn't work. I mean, so here we had Saturn that was a complete failure, and then Scion tries to emulate that model. You know what happened? Scion, every Scion they sold one less Corolla. The numbers on Corolla went down as Scion went up. Young people didn't buy Scion. It was 40-year-old average. It was old farts like us that bought the car.
It was a better looking Corolla.
I'm talking about you, me, and
The people
Jeff.
who go to the grocery store every day to get their meat fresh is the people that were buying that car, and that might be where they went
but
wrong.
here-
I'm lying.
But guys,
I mean-
here's the brilliance of Toyota, right? And the brilliance of Toyota is that they're able to look in the mirror and say, we failed. We're going to kill this. And we don't care what Jim Farley thinks about it. Right now, you have Jim Farley in charge of Ford. And it's the same thing, but there's nobody above him to tell him that the model that he's pushing doesn't work. And that people proved a very basic point, that they want to buy cars from car dealers. They don't look for an online experience. They
Disagree.
don't look to buy directly from a manufacturer.
Disagree 100%.
They do shop online, Max. And they do
But they do want to go to a dealership. They want to talk.
Max doesn't want it to be true that people want to buy online because it makes
They
it
want to
in
speak
finances
to
world
customers.
harder.
I mean, they want to speak to a
Sell that.
salesperson. They want to test drive a car, right? And I think Toyota was brilliant when they killed Scion, but I don't think that Ford or GM or whoever else is planning to go direct to consumer thinking, like Jim, you said that Scion was chasing Saturn. Right now, Ford, GM, and everybody else is chasing Tesla, right? And they will never catch up to Tesla. So unless they have enough brilliance and self-confidence to look in the mirror and say, you know, this is a failed experiment and we should kill it. You know, it will end badly for all of them. Because
How many
none
times
of
have you
them
heard me say Farley needs to dust off his resume?
I know, but it's not just him. It's also GM. I think Stellantis has some thoughts. You know, they have thoughts of going direct
The
to consumer.
agency model.
Nissan.
Look, the
You know.
direct consumer model does work for certain individuals. So guys, I ordered a Rivian R1S. I've never test driven it, Max. I will never test drive it until it shows up at my house, to be honest with you. I might find a somewhere in the country at some point in time over the next year and a half as I'm waiting for this car to be built, I might find a demo place where I actually go to be able to test drive one. But I'm personally willing to do that. The data is out there that people want a buying experience, but they want their buying experience, not a buying experience that we
I have
define
stock
for them.
in
That's
Lucid,
where Carvana made a mistake. They
But
defined
Jason, you represent less than 2% of population of planet Earth.
well, that's people are ordering Teslas left and right. They can't even keep up with the demand.
Close.
Here's
Yeah.
Not
Every
even close.
F-150, every electric F-150 was ordered and purchased sight unseen. All millions of the units.
But wait for the deliveries. When people get disappointed, when they get crushed, that their Ford Lightning doesn't go more than 160 miles, can't tow anything except for a grocery bag. You know, come on, guys. I mean, at the
That's
end
a
of the day,
purchase
you have to look at registrations. You have to look at registrations. All the registrations are for internal combustion engine cars on planet Earth.
Are we going to
But yet
EV
California is not planet Earth. There's Europe, there's United States, there's Africa, there's Asia. Nobody wants the electric car. Stop this nonsense, guys. And it's
I
not,
want an electric car.
look at the registration.
Jason, you're in advertising. You're not the market.
Yeah, there we go. I'm not the market.
No, I
have
mean,
no
like-
idea what.
That's like me saying I like this male piece, so since I like it, it'll work.
Jason, I'm
Exactly.
with you. I'm not going to a dealership to test drive a car, and I spend more than 75% of my time in dealerships.
I'm with. I own
And I'm not
dealerships.
even
and I don't
going
want
to
to go
drive
into a
one
dealership.
bit.
So here's my reality. I'm going to actually agree with every single one of you, which I know
That's
sounds
good.
bizarre, but I agree with all of you. I am greedy. I want every single customer I can possibly have in any way that I need to. But here's where I have a problem. When you have the OEMs and the vendors that are pushing their product to help you sell these cars, if my data at my dealership says that I'm only going to sell less than 1% of my customers online, then my marketing strategy, my tools that I have to do it, all of those things need to be in line with what I'm actually going to sell. What we're doing right now, where I think we have a problem with pushing the narrative, is we're trying to buy way more tools and marketing to satisfy that 2%. We need to have all of our tools and marketing satisfying the 98%, and then have a way and a process to help the 2% buy the way they want to buy so that we can have it all. But the ROI has to be there for what you're doing, which means, yes, I agree with all of you, but you have to put it into perspective on what it is, how much it costs to actually sell a car to a customer when it's a small percentage at your individual store. Now,
And April, to elaborate on Toyota's brilliance, right? Unlike everybody else, Toyota is not pushing all electric. Toyota is not pushing direct to consumer. And Toyota sells 10 million cars a year.
Mhm.
So somebody in Japan has common sense that somehow was lost in Detroit.
Is that
This
an old story?
conversation always cracks me up, like every single time. We can always go back and forth on this, but in the end, we beat a dead horse when it comes to this. Because in the end, none of us are going to decide if it's happening or not. So it's like, if it's happening, you're going to have to adjust the strategy. I've said this before on the show, and it comes from one of my favorite shows, but you got to go back to things like Polaroid for a minute. In, what was it, 1948, Polaroid sold its first camera. And in 1978, at its peak, it sold, I think it was 13 million cameras. In 2001, it had to file bankruptcy because nobody sounded an alarm to say things are changing and to say you've got to adapt to the system. If they had, that camera wouldn't be sitting in the back of a
The
closet.
things that were
It wouldn't
changing
be
at the
back out
time
with
actually
things that they
worked.
made.
Right.
The
Right.
things
Things
that
are
were
not
changing
that-
then actually worked. What they're doing now does not actually work.
Right.
It's,
So that's
Things
it's
are
just
not
like
changing.
Carvana. I mean,
Things are being
we're like,
pushed.
oh, Carvana didn't work because of their advertising. They didn't work because of this. They didn't work
Concepts
because of
don't
that.
work, Bobby. They don't
They
work.
didn't. They got into trouble initially.
don't
Correct me
work.
if I'm wrong.
Not
Maybe I
gonna
missed
work.
it because they didn't do the DMV
Never
paperwork.
gonna work.
Titles and registrations weren't processed
Never
on
gonna
time.
happen.
That was the beginning of their downfall. But we can call it whatever we want because Carvana's spend in advertising was significantly less per car than NADA's average as of last year. So we can look at it that way. And look, I don't know, but
Bobby, you have, forget advertising, Bobby. Listen, I'm a simple person, right? I don't even know how to use Excel. Okay.
I know.
Okay. Thank you. But
Admit that on air.
I mean, I
Which
want to
is why
make
you
it
want to go to the
super
dealership to
clear
test drive your car.
that Carvana had an expense of delivering the car to the customer's house that would add between $1,000 to $2,000 to each delivery.
How?
Right? What do you mean? Because if you live in, I don't know, in Indiana, and the car is located in California, it costs a lot of money to get it from California
Cost
to
a
Indiana.
car hauler, and you do a couple at a time. I mean, this is the thing I'm saying is it's like just
But Bobby,
because
this is
of
bad. Hold on a
you-
second. This car hauler is not free.
no, it's not
That
free.
last mile delivery is extremely expensive because you're not pulling up to my house
So-
with a car hauler that has 20 cars in it. I need
So
an
what I hear you
individual
saying-
delivery. I need an
what I hear you
individual
saying is
delivery.
They
a
jacked up by not
walk-around.
charging for delivery.
Yeah,
Because
Bobby,
I
I
paid
need
for
a
delivery for a
walk-around.
car.
And as the commercial of Carvana says, you pull up to my house with my car on the flatbed and nobody else's car is on it. It's just me, the driver, who's going to show me the car and do the walk around.
Max, the
That's just a
what we're
pricing
hearing
model.
is
That's a pricing
everybody
model.
keeps saying we learned a lot from Carvana, and I'm saying we didn't learn anything but bad business from Carvana.
Right, we learned what not to do.
Jason, Jeff,
Well,
you have
look,
to jump in if you've got
They
something
sold
to say.
I actually wanna hear
650 cars per state per month. So imagine if you had the whole state at their peak numbers with their marketing, national advertising, and I sold 650 new and used Lincoln frickin' Mercuries. That's a lot harder to sell than, hit click.
Right.
Right now. But you've got, when we're talking about
sold-
adapting, I'm not opposed to Bobby, with the Kodak story.
It's not a story, it's a fact. And it's
but I don't know what Photomat could have done. But anyway, I'm not opposed to that story about evolving because in the late 80s, I had 5 service drivers picking up and dropping off cars for service, customers that never came in at their house and at their business. And we were doing field deliveries. I mean, not massive numbers, but 30, 40, 50 a month.
Jeff, we tried.
So what?
Dealers bought Roadster. They bought every one of the digital auto fi. They tried. And yes, a certain
They
number
just bought
of
a tool.
customers did do it. But
Right.
we sincerely tried. The industry made us try. All the
No, they didn't try, Jim. They didn't try.
They didn't try.
They bought,
They didn't follow
they
through.
bought a widget.
In
They
most
bought a
cases,
widget.
but not in all.
They bought a widget. They slapped a widget on their website and they said, "I tried." Look,
Yeah.
Jeff just
No,
talked about
guys,
a
Jim
very
is right.
process.
Jim is right. All the
in the
disruptors,
1980s.
all the disruptors had
Jason,
it
don't
done.
let Max take that from you.
COVID-
You're just going to cave like
COVID-
that?
COVID was the
Welcome to the
ultimate
view.
opportunity. COVID was the ultimate opportunity.
Come, Matador, bring it out.
Yeah, for all the the roadsters, the autofis, the whoever, right? This was the ultimate opportunity to show people and to prove the concept. Like Bobby says, that people want to buy online.
Oh, no, people
Isn't
do
it fun? Do you
buy
guys
online.
remember when Netflix came out and to
This
rent a movie, you couldn't walk through a store and get it immediately? You had to wait days for a CD to come to your house.
This ultimate opportunity that they had, they couldn't capitalize on. They
Max,
completely
I'd be willing to
failed.
use a Blockbusters card in your wallet. But
That's funny, Max. You have to laugh at that. That is funny. Do you have one? Show us.
you do. I bet you do, don't you? You got a Blockbusters card.
I'm an anti-pack rat, but so I don't have mine, but I was a Blockbuster fan up to the end.
Hey, look, a process is
That's
only as good
easy.
as how well it can be executed.
April is my
They did
sister.
execute the
You
process.
understand?
exactly.
Can you imagine if Blockbuster would have accepted what Netflix was doing and would have offered the same service? Wouldn't have that blown everybody's mind?
Yeah,
Because
but Bobby,
then
I
you
think
could
you're
have had
missing
it
the
delivered to your
point.
house. But imagine if like an Uber person brought it to your house, or
But Bobby,
imagine if Blockbuster adapted to have a
Bobby,
streaming service. They wouldn't be out of
Bobby,
business.
You're missing the point, right? With your Kodak example, I'll give you another example.
It's not an example. It's a fact.
Right, but I'll give you another fact.
That's
We
still
had
an example of a
VHS,
factual thing that
and we
happened.
had Betamax. We had VHS and we had Betamax. And you know what? The
I don't even know what
consumer,
Betamax is. I need an
the
explanation on that.
consumer
Bullshit.
decided, the
No, I
consumer
don't.
decided that VHS is a better model than Betamax. Right? Right now, we don't give the opportunity to the consumer to decide whether the internal combustion engine or the electric car is a better choice, because we have all these government subsidies pushing electric cars. If you take government out of the equation and the Green Deal insanity out of the equation, right? You
policy
know that
tracks.
consumers are going with internal combustion engine 10 times out of 10.
You got a fan in the audience. Robert Pierce loves you, Max.
That's right. He knows what he's talking
Hey,
about.
look,
Listen, if there was a
every
car charging
customer-
station at every gas station, I think you'd be surprised by how many people would choose that.
I'm
It's like
erasing
every time
all
we
the
get into
Bobby
this,
is
everybody's
full
like,
of comments.
oh, it's because the government's making you do it. Like, people don't have any kind of choice. I mean, what are we talking
Bobby,
about
I don't
here?
see any fans of yours on the sideline.
I don't need friends. I'm an individual thinker.
I'm a fan of Bobby.
But-
by the way.
Thank you, Jason.
Oh
But what
my
I'm saying is,
God.
see, where I'm not
Bobby and
one-sided in this
Jason-
is I'm saying we
Bobby
do
and
need to have
Jason
both.
have
People
formed
need to
an
have
alliance.
choices.
Yes, they need to have
Bobby and
choices.
Jason have an alliance. Oh no.
No. We're not alliance. We just we want choices.
Like,
We
I
May
have
I?
an alliance with April,
Jeff,
and I don't
please,
make a
Jeff,
secret of
Jeff's
it.
got something.
April
Call on
and
me.
I aligned.
Jeff, just go ahead and put your
Right?
hand
There's
up.
no
Jeff,
secret
you don't
there.
raise your hand. You just jump in. You've seen this, right? You've met us.
You're
before.
you're talking over each other. It's very uncomfortable. It's a very toxic environment. It's very
Oh, hey,
toxic.
listen,
This is
hey, that's what the
Brittany,
dog
this is
pound
the dysfunctional dog
I feel-
pound,
I
like
feel
grandma's in the
pork chop
closet
out
drinking
there.
at Thanksgiving. All right.
No, we don't agree on these things.
Jeff,
So
I feel
what's
pork
easier to
chop out
sell?
there
And
and all
Jason, I'm going to
over it.
assume because you're in Rivian and you're, inside of yourself, you got a man bun and whatever. You probably
I wish I
have
had
an
a pair of a
iPhone.
man bun.
You probably
Yes,
have
I
an
do.
iPhone, right?
100%.
Because you're one of them weird people like a Saturn person. You have an iPhone. All right. So what's easier to sell? Consumer product. What's easier to sell than an iPhone? Anything, especially when a new one comes out? And do they have
iPhone?
showrooms?
No, it's a cult because of the experience. I don't have.
And
to go
they
to
have
showrooms to get
showrooms.
it.
The experience.
Oh yeah,
And they have showrooms.
Yes.
I'm stealing this from Big Tom LaPointe at Preston Auto Group, who this was his point to me. So I don't want to act like I came up with it, but it's there's nothing easier to sell. There's nothing that has a bigger waiting list, nothing easier to click now and get it in the mail than an iPhone, period, in the world, any other product. And they still have showrooms.
Well, it's a choice. That's what we're saying. That's what I'm saying.
We're not saying no showrooms. We're saying
They
we want to have a choice.
They
Yeah,
have
no.
a choice.
We're-
They have.
we're
You
not saying
don't.
no
Someone
showrooms.
said they don't go into showrooms. I don't go into a showroom. I know every general manager in town. I
We're
call up. I
saying
want this lease. I get my car.
Failed. The
However, somebody
disruptors
wants to buy a
have
car, they
failed.
should have the option to do so. And if we don't adapt and we continue to be conformists, we run into problems, which is why I think when new things come out, it shouldn't be something that we're afraid of.
So what Carvana and Vroom did
Bobby,
wrong
you
is they
got
didn't
no
offer
fans on your
the
sideline.
choice of someone coming into a showroom and working with a person and gaining rapport and getting steered to the right unit because the customer doesn't know which one they should be on. I mean, let's face it. Everyone wants to be in control, but they really don't. When I go into a restaurant and I say, I'll have the fish, I like when the waiter gives me I wouldn't do that today. I want the guy to take control. I want the sales guy or gal to put me on the right unit. Because
And
I
look,
have
and
tough
so- and
credit.
look,
I need the rebate. I
we
need the
all do.
loan. I need the whatever, right?
And listen,
Look,
guys, at the end of the day,
choice creates an experience. So when I choose to go into the restaurant, if I choose to go into the dealership, if I choose to purchase online, these are experiences that I'm choosing. What we're saying is Carvana created a choice, but a choice that not enough people wanted to take. There definitely a fair amount wanted to take, but not enough to create a business model out of it.
but that's my point.
They
As
plenty
business-
took it, as
as a
long as
business,
it also
we wanna
didn't
sell-
include stepping on trades, overspending advertising, overspending transport. Per unit, there's something their SG&A, which is selling, general, and admin. They're like $3,600 a copy cost. in those
Right.
things. So what you really had was, I mean, I know they have other dealership operations and they supposedly know how to run, the prior, but it's also not run properly. I mean, if an operator was in there, maybe it would have worked.
Right, but at the
Like
end of the
expenses
day,
in
as-
line
as a
with what
business-
really
As a
happens.
business, you want to sell cow milk, right? You don't want to sell soy milk or almond milk, right? Because a tiny percentage of population is interested in that nonsense,
You
right?
guys grew up in a milk commercial area where it was
But
like,
the
"Ooh,
98% of people
got a
will
baby
buy
cow, you don't
cow
need to drink
milk,
that
right?
There's a
According to
great
Max, the whole
comment
world
on
is
here
drinking
that's
cow
People will
milk.
buy cow milk. And you
a
can't
great
ignore
comment
the
from a
fact.
LinkedIn user. We had a full online purchasing option during COVID. During 2 years of COVID, sold 400 cars a month, and less than 3% actually completed the process online, even during the worst months of COVID.
Yeah, because
I mean,
everybody
if there was
wants
ever an
cow milk.
incubator, that was
Everybody
it.
wants cow milk. That's the
It doesn't
concept.
have to be one way or the other. That is so
Yes.
closed-minded.
So Max, would you get rid of chocolate milk too? I just want to know so we can get the negative comments out of the
I
way.
need to know that too.
Like,
At
would you
Christmas
not have the
time, we have
I like
choice
chocolate milk.
of having
Jason,
my
Jason,
chocolate milk or white milk?
Jason,
No, but chocolate milk is
Jason-
not real milk. Stop this BS.
Jason, at Christmas time, we have eggnog.
There we go. We're gonna get rid of the eggnog now too. Come on.
No,
But
chocolate
the
milk makes
eggnog-
sense because all you're doing is taking what you already have and adding one little thing to it. So the
Exactly.
ROI
Chocolate milk does not come from brown cows.
correct. So
If
chocolate
someone wants to click buy now, let them. Who's standing in the way?
Right, exactly.
Okay. Okay.
No,
But
we-
Jim
Yeah.
Ziegler's saying it's
April
not a
is right.
disruptor.
April
That's
is
the
right.
point.
What April is saying is that you take cow milk and you make it a little better. You add chocolate to it.
bingo.
Right.
That's
You
what
don't
Cardi
take
B-
soy or
Bingo.
almond.
You
And
can have all
extract-
three. You can
This
choose
is,
what
this
you
is
want to drink.
insanity, guys. You cannot extract milk out of almonds. The same way you can't sell electric cars to the majority of people on planet Earth. Stop this bullshit.
I tried it
Maybe
with an
that's why I
almond.
bought an electric car because I drink almond milk.
You
Where's
know,
your
Bobby
going to get your
asked,
almond milk right now? Oh, I thought you were going to the fridge to get your almond milk.
No, I was getting
Jason,
a highlighter
the
of
Rivian
paper
buyers
because Jim
drink soy.
muted me.
That's
The
I'm
leather is
resourceful.
vegan leather.
Man bun.
I
Vegan
just think a
leather.
lot of times we get so caught up in what our opinion
Carnivore.
is of something that we don't actually listen to what everybody's saying. Because most of us have said the same thing this whole time, with the exception
I'm sorry,
of Matt,
Bobby. When did you get here?
is like it just blows my mind.
Can
Like,
we talk
But also-
about
Jeff, you brought an
Right.
extremely disruptive product to the market at the beginning of a time where it wasn't accepted and people thought it wouldn't work. Fact.
That's right.
Disruption is just one little change. Instead of
Max,
going
you're
into
bringing a
into the
disruptive
place,
product to the market right now at a time where people think it wouldn't work. How is it possible that we can look at something that's disruptive, or considered disruptive, and challenge the status quo and say it can't possibly work? Everybody on the screen has been doing it for years. How does that even come out of your mouth?
It's very simple,
It
Bobby. You
doesn't
see,
even make no sense.
Bobby, I'll
It's all
answer
the
that
cow milk
question
he's
easily.
drinking.
All these companies, right? Whether it's AutoFi, Roadster, whoever, all the online tools, they got an extra boost of confidence from the stock market, because during COVID, all these companies, whether it's Peloton, Zoom, DocuSign, their valuations went through the roof, right? And you lose touch with reality. And the reality is that nobody is interested in this unless you are locked down, right? And nobody is
No.
interested in buying a car online unless you're locked down.
Well,
At
so
the
then what's
end
the
of
harm
the
in
day,
making it an option?
People want to go to the showroom, look at different cars, touch different cars,
Not
talk to
everybody
the
wants to do that.
salesperson about certain options, about whatever interests them, and then they will make that purchase in that showroom. Yes, you're right. There's a tiny percentage of population that drinks soy milk and drinks almond milk and buys Tesla. Yes, 100%. But that's probably 2 to 3% in the United States, not in the world.
So then
You
why
look
does
at
it matter if
all
it's an
the
option?
3%.
And don't forget, and Bobby, don't forget, all these car manufacturers, whether it's Stellantis, GM, Ford, Toyota, they're operating in the world, not just in the United States, right? They sell cars in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in South America, and Australia, and they understand that the reality is not there for electric cars. The reality is not there for online direct-to-consumer, product.
It's not, but that's not true. Like, look, we wanted to show that first comment that was like, oh, only 3%. Well, 3% of 400, math's not really my jam, but isn't that 12? And didn't we run about $5,000, not counting the behind stuff? That's $60,000 a month. And for the second one that we just showed, why is a tow truck driver delivering the car instead of a salesperson?
Bobby, what is 400?
Nobody is advocating to take the relationship out of the deal.
Because they don't want to do the extra work. Experience.
Correct. It's like,
Stop, Bobby, stop. What is 400?
April Simmons. How
you don't
many
have to
people-
give up the 400 to
What
get
is-
the 12.
What is 400? What does 400 mean?
400 was the comment that came up that said we sold 400 cars in a month and only 3% were done online.
So here's the problem, Bobby. I love where your head's at, and I think we all, like Matt says, we need to adapt or die. So I don't think any of us are I don't think any of us really are disagreeing. Here's where the issue, the reality comes into play when we're talking about the dealership. It's the execution of these things. Because here's the problem. Jim says it all the time. What you're saying, do what most of the people do, not all the time, not some of the time, whatever you're saying is. Can you say it for me? Say it for me real quick.
What some of the people do some of the time as opposed to what most of the people do most of the time.
Bingo. So the problem that we have right now is if we want to be better than what Carvana was, and why they failed was because they couldn't execute. We're now asking dealers to execute better than Carvana when we're still trying to create a better experience in the showroom. Now we're saying, hey, you need to create a better
Are we creating a better experience? Like, are we really though? Because I still see us doing the same thing, expecting different results.
But
Yes and no.
Carvana couldn't execute because of math.
correct.
I don't
It's not
disagree
experience,
that
it's
we're not
math.
prepared, but
So-
that doesn't mean we shouldn't learn.
I agree, but we're not learning right now because there's
Agreed.
not enough ROI there for us to learn. The only reason most people have a digital retailing tool right now is because the OEM forced them to. That's why. That's the only reason they
Now
have.
that wait a minute, April,
Hold on one
you're
second.
right, you're
I've had
right.
a digital retailing tool for over a decade. For over 10 years,
Yeah.
I've had a digital retailing tool. Okay, why? Because I do believe in helping consumers get to my website answering all their questions, trying to be more transparent or whatever the heck that means, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about giving the consumer what they want. So I agree, but right now the ROI is not there for people to care enough to say, I'm going to invest the money, train, do my entire process, get my desk bought in, and all of the advertising that needs to go into making sure we do better than Carvana did in the execution. And until we're there, it needs to be a higher percent. It needs to be higher than 3%.
It's not an ROI thing. I'm going to chirp in because this is me putting my dealer principal hat back on. All right, look, I allocated a percentage, all right, of our spend every month from an operations and marketing perspective to trying new shit. All right. And like, it was not because times were good. All right. It was like, what was going to come next? I think this is more about being proactive. If somebody's out there saying like, I don't see it in the ROI, I don't give a crap about the ROI. All right. It's taking the time to be a real operator and looking at what's potentially coming down the pipeline and getting prepared for that. Right.
Correct.
Like, look, small percentage of people right now are buying completely online. But what if all of a sudden that would be 10%? For whatever reason, I have no idea why it would. But anyways, what if, right? Am I, as a business, ready and prepared to do that?
Correct. I agree with you, Jason, which is why we do it. I've been delivering cars to people's homes for 15 years. I mean, this is not new. The issue is the hubbub of it all, of this is we need to transition everything we do to this right now. It needs to be what you're saying. It's trying new shit. It's figuring out the process. It's
Right.
do out-of-state titles. How do we do transportation and actually deliver the vehicle?
Carvana couldn't figure that one out.
Well, we're on the same page. We're talking about two different detours here. One coming from a customer perspective and one coming from a dealer perspective.
So
I'm going to date myself. Who's been around long enough to remember Auto by Tel? They were going to change everything. You were faxing it in. You were going to get your deal, and everything was going to change. And then there was this guy called Wayne Huizinga, who bought all the rental car companies because he was going to assign his own residual to all the new cars he sold and then place them on whichever tier rental car company so that he can create his own lease that even the manufacturers couldn't compete with. Oh, yeah, one price. Disrupt everything. Give the customer what they want. What does the customer really want? They want to pick a car. They want your best price in writing with no pressure and a number on the tray. They want it signed so it's good when they come back, and then they want to take it to everyone else in town, digitally or physically, and see if no one could beat it by a hundo to decide if they're going to give it to you. That's what they want. So I understand that we got to give them what they want, but if we give them everything we got to hear them. But if we give them everything they want, we're not going to compete. So,
hey, Jeff,
yeah.
Do you realize Tesla just put on a $7,500 rebate on certain models of Tesla?
Oh no!
Well, that's because the man bun's mad at it right
got
now
a
because of
rebate.
Twitter.
Tesla has a rebate. I'm seeing rebates. I'm seeing $7,000 off of MSRP on television. I mean, we have normalized. Used car values have dropped 43% in the last 6 months. Guess what? Carvana is holding hundreds of thousands, 50,000, I don't know the number, big ass number of cars. And and the value on those cars that they paid too much for originally is dropping tremendously. So, you know, all the things that they did, they over advertised, they spent too much on advertising, they spent too much on cars, they didn't recondition enough. To April's point, they couldn't get the titles done interstate, much less in-state. I mean, everything they did was a sham. I mean, who would have thought that convicted felons wouldn't be convicted felons act like convicted felons, you know? You know?
So Jim, we only have 9 minutes left on the show. So I want to talk about what things into 2023 should we be doing? Because we've talked about what the disruptors that have failed. And I feel like we've talked a lot about Carvana and the failures and this, that, and the other. But I do think that this year, because when people make a lot per car and there's not cars on the ground and salesmen don't have to be salesmen, they won't do any of the extra things. They won't try new shit, as Jason.
They don't know how to sell cars. They've been giving them away for so long at 10,000 over. They have no concept how to sell.
All the atrophy, sales atrophy.
This year they'll finally do the things that we couldn't force them to do in the last 3 years. They will try these things because why? They need to make a paycheck. So things will change this year. I think it's a great opportunity for us to actually say what's going to work. What has the test of time for this year that we should be looking at to actually have a better 2023, or at least, you know, sell more volume and still have net profits what we had in 2022. I think it's completely possible, but I do think we are going to have to pivot and change a little bit.
Tesla sold 1.3 million cars last year. General Motors sold 1.67 thousand. Toyota sold 1.5 million, 1.6 million, and General Motor and Ford sold 1.9 million. So this
is only in the United States.
In the United States, yeah, I'm talking U.S. figures. Toyota sold 1.5. General Motors sold 80,000 more units than Toyota for the first time. Ford dropped a significant percentage, 8 or 9%, and still came in at 1.9 million. So that's where the numbers came in, you know, in 2022.
Yeah, but you know, Jim, Toyota sells another 8.5 million cars elsewhere.
Max, hang on, I'll let you talk. Hang on a minute. How many times have we heard on LinkedIn or other media, all these people congratulating themselves on having record months? I had a record month. A monkey
no shit.
In his mouth would have had a record month.
The fish were jumping in the boat.
Yeah, exactly.
So look, going to April's point, what does disruptors actually look like? We've done a great job of, I guess, identifying what disruptors don't look like. But I think moving into 2023, I think that the businesses and the companies are going to bring the most amount of disruption in 2023 is going to be hyper personalization at scale. All right. That's hyper personalization in their marketing efforts, hyper personalization in their operation efforts, and they're doing it at scale. It's not this like, here's a shoe and everyone's going to fit into this shoe. It's hyper personalization. I think that's what disruption is going to look like in 2023. And the companies that do it and the businesses that do it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Well said. What do you think, Jeff?
I want to honor Bobbie.
No, don't do that.
Who's on my team now, Jim?
Bobbie, even though you're
Don't do
completely
that,
wrong
Jeff.
about it being disruptors, I want to honor you about just meeting the customer where they're at in the channel they're in. That's it. Just meeting the customer at in their channel. Then I was thinking about that leather optional head, and that store. So I was running a Cadillac store, and then it also had Land Rover, but I also had Rolls and Bentley. And what was interesting is all the picking up and dropping off, and for the mom and pop and the Cadillacs, we had the bingo game and the popcorn and everything there, and waiting on them hand and foot, and that's what they wanted. And then the Land Rover person was a little more out there and geographically further away because we were less dealered with Land Rover back then, and a little bit of an odd, different kind of customer, right? Attracted to that ad. And we worked with them partially, meeting them at the equestrian event and, whatever, and dropping off their car.
Personalization.
But then I'm running the Rolls and Bentley store, and I'm selling about 25 new and used exotic a month. And if I met 2 or 3 customers in person a month, I'll kiss your patootie. And it was all nationwide. I didn't even sell half in Florida. So it was all transports. It was all FedEx paperwork delivery. It was all wires. It was all relationship and referrals and whatever. So under that same rooftop, I had 3 different kinds of meeting the customer where they're at. So I was a Bobbie. All I'm saying is that this stuff isn't disruptive.
Oh, I don't disagree with you on that.
It is
I'm
disruptive.
fighting for the customer for the situation to be hyper personalized, and for us to meet the customer where they want to be, so we don't lose business, and to do it the right way, and not tomorrow, but to start adapting.
Exactly.
Well, April's been delivering cars at home for 15 years. It's just the staff figuring out what the client wants and handle it. It's not brain surgery.
Well, it's not brain surgery, but to be a disruptor means you're actually executing it. Like, everyone can have the bloody idea. All right. If you're going to be a disruptor, you're the one that's actually freaking doing it.
Yep. Max, 2023.
I think, again, I'm more grounded in reality than most of you. Right?
I can't even keep a serious face when you say things like that.
Yeah. And if I'm a car dealer in 2023, I have to come to reality. I have to come to terms with the fact that nobody's buying my car for over sticker. I need to train my salespeople. I need to go after units in operation for my service department. I need to maximize my profits in F&I one way or another. And if I don't do that, my dealership will be on the block, right? Forget all the soy milk, almond milk drinking,
What's your obsession
retards,
with milk today?
retards that want to
What's on
buy an
your
electric car. If I'm a Nissan dealer, I don't have a single electric car in stock except for Leaf that nobody wants.
Max
Right?
hates electric cars.
If I'm a Toyota dealer, I don't have anything, period, except for hybrids that everybody wants. So
You
I
don't have
have
to give yourself high blood pressure every week being so frustrated with EVs.
No, but
I'm
it's not-
worried for your
go back
health.
to basics.
The
You
amount
have
of
to
milk
know-
you apparently drink.
You have to train your salespeople. You have to have product knowledge. You have to be able to close people in F&I. You have to be able to go after people so they come back to your service department, as opposed to going into Jiffy Lube or Valvoline or any other independent. And if you can't understand the basics, you will fail in 2023. Your dealership will be for sale. And an operator who understands the basics will buy your dealership for 10 cents on the dollar.
We're
Guys,
That's the next disruptors.
Max,
See,
you are the
April-
single argument
we have-
for open
we have-
borders.
April is with me.
1 hour. We're down to the end of this thrilling episode. I'll tell you, Max, I appreciate you're grounded in reality, and Bobbie, if you get a tinfoil hat, you can still talk to the flying saucers. Everybody,
It's crazy that high performance track record I have for things like this.
Say goodbye.